Hi, my name's Jane. We hardly know each other, but that's about to change. You're going to get to know a lot about me, maybe even more than you imagine. This whole thing's kind of like a blind date. I mean, here we are in your brand new Corvette, riding along the super information highway. You put your big, muscular arm around me and whisper sweet things in my ear. And I promise to do whatever your little heart desires, but only if you make the right moves. Just imagine watching me get propositioned by my sleazeball boss. Why, you could even make me strip for him. But if you make the wrong moves, you could turn me into a nun. Imagine that. Me? A nun? Ha! I don't think so. But it's really all up to you. God knows what you'll do with that hot little mouse of yours. Point is, life's a game, and this game is full of life. You do right by me, and I guarantee I'll do right by you. But please, please don't turn me into a nun. I'm not that kind of girl. I've got a reputation. Around town, I'm known as Microwave Jane because they say I heat up faster than any micro. And when the fire chief visited, he wrote up a new code and made me wear a smoke alarm between my thighs. And then the Coast Guard complained that I was creating tsunamis in my waterbed. And then the Pope visited and said I was the only person on Earth that had been on my knees more times than he had. Now the president's filed a restraining order claiming I have a romantic interest in the Washington Monument. Oh, you men can be so vicious. Look at me. Just look at me. Do I look like that type of girl? Well, if you think I'm that type of girl, you got another thing coming, mister. Because I don't do one-night stands, I don't date musicians, and I don't roll over just because you bought in this game. Fair warning, I'll be resisting your every move and enjoying your every mistake. I trust it won't be the first time you made mistakes with the opposite sex. Now listen up, the rules of the game are real simple. You see, I meet this guy in a parking lot. Now you are supposed to identify with this guy. I mean, you in your own perverse, simple-minded way are supposed to be him. Got it? Now, if you make the right moves, I end up with this schlep. That is, I end up with you. But if you get real lucky, you end up saving me from the bad guy. You become my hero. And as the hero's reward, guess what? You get to take me home and have your own degenerate little way with me. Of course, if you make the wrong move, you may just end up playing with your little mouse the rest of the night. It's all up to you. Are you game? Then come with me and you'll soon discover why plumbers never wear ties when I'm around.
Plumbers don't wear ties. One of the most notorious video games ever made, which is even more crazy considering that most of the people who know about the game have never even played it. Here's the story about how it all came together and its surprisingly long legacy. Way back in 1976, Michael Anderson worked at an energy company in Boston. While there, he worked on the ARPANET, which was a very basic precursor to the internet. Years later, he founded a digital mapping company that was very lucrative. He sold the company and the buyout money gave him just enough currency to give him the free time to, as he says, get into trouble. At the time, movies were experimenting with different forms of interactivity. This would later culminate in something like Bombmeister, the interactive movie where the audience could choose the outcome. Anyway, hearing about alternate storytelling gave Anderson an idea. He wanted to experiment with something on interactive stories. He had no intention of becoming a filmmaker or a game designer. He just wanted to try something new. Since he had the time and money, he figured, why not? He wanted to experiment with a story that had different outcomes that were dependent upon the user's choices. Kind of like those old choose-your-own-adventure books in video form. He thought about genres and ultimately decided to make the story revolve around a mindless rom-com, which would be the most cost-effective theme to make, since it wouldn't involve any special effects. Fueled by too much booze and weed, he wrote the script over the course of a few days. It was about a guy named John and a girl named Jane. The two meet up in a parking lot, and after a series of hijinks, they fall in love. If you make the right choices. The character of John is a plumber on a bike, and for some reason, he wears a tie. While writing it, the project didn't have a title. At the end of the script, Jane can't believe John's a plumber, and tells him, "Plumbers don't wear ties." Anderson decided that title was just silly enough for the production. Now with the script, he looked into how to get the game made. In the late 80s, early 90s, thanks to CDs, companies were figuring out exciting new things to do with this increase in storage space. We had light gun games like Mad Dog McCree, which were Laserdisc and often had fairly decent-sized budgets. The arcade units were using dedicated hardware, and the video looked very crisp. Unfortunately, technology wasn't there yet for home units, and often what looked great in arcades was very low res and pixelated on PCs and consoles. Anderson was looking into doing a full motion video game, but decided most people wouldn't have been able to play it back then, since the average computer wouldn't have been able to handle it. There were some games like The Seventh Guest that spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of development time to get to where the video footage was still pixelated and low resolution. The average CD-ROM transfer rate had to be 125 kilobytes per second. That's trivial by today's standards, but back then, it was more than most. The speed was just too slow to show full-screen motion video, so the videos usually only filled a small fraction of the screen. Another problem was CD-ROM video storage. A CD-ROM could only hold 640 megabytes. They tested and tried, but with what they wanted to do, it just wasn't feasible to make the game with full motion video. This wasn't a major company who had endless resources and tech guys who could work on compression and other facets. This was a small, indie project that really was being made as an experiment. Anderson decided instead of full motion video, to make the game as a series of still images. That was the only way they could guarantee the game would run on an ordinary CD-ROM. With the concept for the game and the script in place, he started to look into casting. Not being a casting person, or having any ties to Hollywood, he would just go talk to potential actors, told them what he was doing, and asked if they'd like to be involved. One day he walked into a restaurant in Glendale, California for lunch and was stunned. They were doing a lingerie show, and there was one girl who stood out from the rest. Jean Bisson. Anderson knew she'd be the it girl. He approached her and asked if she'd be interested in acting in this video game project. She enthusiastically said sure. Jean had already been acting for years as Hollywood, one of the original gorgeous ladies of wrestling. She also appeared on a few TV shows like Saved by the Bell and Married with Children. With the it girl Jane hired, Anderson continued to scout around looking for cast members. Most of the people he asked agreed to be in the game. He then asked them if they had any family or friends who'd be interested. He even hired a few of his own friends to be involved. After a few rounds of this, he had his cast. Anderson filmed the production in the summer of 1993 in Glendale, California. Since the budget was low, he didn't bother getting filming permits, especially considering they were just going to be taking a bunch of pictures. The exterior locations they did without permission. They were pretty quick. They would just show up, have the actors get into their poses, and shoot. By the time anyone even realized what they were doing, they were gone. They didn't have to worry about the sound since that would all be added in post. The interiors, on the other hand, were places they were able to get permission to shoot. Thresher's office was in the Arco building in downtown Los Angeles. The director's sister was an executive there, so she arranged for them to shoot the scenes there on a Sunday when no one was at work. The photo shoots went off mostly without a hitch. They'd get weird looks from the locals when they showed up to shoot a scene, especially for the end chase sequence, where Jean is half undressed running away from Thresher. They shot the entirety of the pictures in about 5 to 7 days on weekends. Afterwards, they picked the photos they wanted and worked on recording the audio. They didn't have access to a recording studio, so they recorded most of the audio in a parking lot. Anderson recorded his segments in his living room. Keeping with the theme of all this just being a fun experiment, John flubbed a line, and Anderson decided to just leave it in.
I've been searching for you.
Freudian slip? I'm going to keep that in the script.
When putting together the end chase sequence, there ended up being a ton of continuity errors with Jean's clothing, but they were intentional. When she escapes the building, she isn't wearing her jacket. Then she's outside and it's back on, and she's running away and it's off again. They admittedly wanted to show off Jean's body because they figured that was what the potential audience would want. Jean was in great shape and she was quite proud to show off what she had. Beyond that, they left the continuity errors in there because it made the game sillier. They had Jane stopping to snap pictures with the locals, John's taking a phone call, and so forth. They tried to make it clear that they weren't even remotely taking any of this seriously. Anderson hired a friend of his to do the music for the game. He wanted the intro to be fun, to match the rock music soundtrack. He was able to talk to the folks who ran the Saugus Speedway in Santa Clarita, California, who allowed him to use photographs of the location for the game. One of the cast members worked for Capitol Records. Anderson wanted to use one good song from Capitol's library to accompany all the cheesy music he had in the game. He had a meeting with a high-ranking executive who was furious at the prospect of having a record transferred to digital media. He screamed, saying this would be the end of the recording industry. If they did this, people could and would just copy the damn music and give it away. He ended the meeting telling him that hell would freeze over before he would put anything from Capitol on digital media. A few years later, hell froze over. Anyway, after matching up the audio and the images, they added some very primitive graphical overlays. They then had the game programmed, which took about 2 weeks. It was developed by United Pictures and published under Unica. The game was quietly released on DOS later in 1993. It was a very, very limited release and flew under most people's radar. PC Gamer gave it possibly the lowest score they ever awarded a game. They gave it a 3 out of 100. They called it a pseudo-pornographic photo story with the wit and charm of an elephant's arse. That pretty much would have been the end of the experiment, except this happened. The Fremont, California-based company Kieran Entertainment contacted Anderson. They wanted to port the game to the 3DO console. It seemed that it was really cheap to get a game on the system. The relatively new company 3DO was trying to get developers to put games on their very expensive console. The 3DO launched with a whopping $699 price tag, which dropped to $499 6 months later. In order to survive in this very competitive market, they needed games. They began enticing publishers to put their games on the system by offering a very low royalty rate. If you put a game on the 3DO, they took a cut of $3 per game sold, which was a much better deal than what Sega or Nintendo were offering. It was rumored Sega was charging $13 per game sold, while Nintendo was $15 per game sold. The system also had very loose restrictions on content, which was how a variety of porn games ended up on the console. The 3DO had better hardware than the PCs where they first tested the game, so it'd be able to handle some full-motion video. Kieran wanted to spice the game up a little more, so they paid to add a short full-motion video sequence in the beginning of the game with Jean talking to the player as her character. Anderson wrote the dialogue for Jean to deliver in this new intro. If you entered a code, Jean's outfit would switch to lingerie, and it removed the censors in the intro. The DOS version had the nudity unlocked by default. The intro would be the only full-motion video segment in the entire game. Anderson signed a long-term contract with Kieran for them to have the exclusive rights to the 3DO market. With the game being released on the 3DO, it gathered a lot more attention and made many worst of the year lists. It was called a PowerPoint presentation sold as a game. Most of the people playing the 3DO version were confused as to why only the opening scene was in full motion video. They had no idea this was an entirely new segment on a slideshow DOS game. Still, with the high price tag of the 3DO, most mainstream gamers never even heard of the game, let alone played it. Considering this was just a little experiment for the director, he never intended on making a sequel. He and the people working on it had fun, and that was that. The records of the budget and payment are all long gone, so no one has any idea how much this whole thing cost. Anderson said all he remembers is that it was fairly cheap. Jean said that while she doesn't remember the exact number, she said the actors were all well paid for their time. The game did exactly what Anderson wanted, which was just to make and release his experiment. It gained some attention for its lack of quality, but quickly faded into obscurity. Flash forward ahead to the year 2009. James, the angry video game nerd, did an episode on Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. Needless to say, he didn't like it.
This is one of the worst things I have ever seen in my life.
He deconstructed the game in his usual style, which brought a massive amount of attention to the game. This was a video goofing on this little slideshow game that, as of currently, has been viewed close to 10 million times. This brought the game the most attention it ever received up to this point. People who never even heard of this game before were now joining in the chorus of screaming how this was the worst game of all time. Although to be fair, they probably would be saying the same thing if they did actually play it. Meanwhile, Mike Anderson had no idea this was going on. He had long since moved on, and Plumbers was just a footnote in his life that he had forgotten about. I spoke to him and told him about James's video. He watched it and laughed, saying that some people were taking this way too seriously. This was just something he did as a goof decades ago. His intention was to see if he could make a game, and he not only succeeded at that, but was able to get it released on 2 different platforms. The tale doesn't stop there. In 2017, a Reddit user going by Psychotic Giraffe discovered the game had a small PC release. He looked for it on Google, but only found links to the 3DO version. He eventually found the WorldCat database listing of all library inventories that showed 1 copy existed in all of its 72,000 libraries across the world. He discovered that Ball State University's library, the Alexander M. Bracken Library, still had a copy of the elusive Plumbers Don't Wear Ties PC version. He didn't live in Indiana, so he asked if any of the locals on Reddit could get the disc to him. One local user offered to help and sent him the disc. He was able to get the game running on an old Compaq Armada. Wanting to share his discovery, he ripped the files and set up a DOSBox emulator configuration that could run the game on modern machines. He then uploaded it to the Internet Archive, which is where you can still find it. Now we go slightly ahead to November of 2020. Josh from Limited Run Games contacted Mike Anderson and was overjoyed when he responded. He told Mike he'd been trying to find a way to contact him for 4 years. Josh is one of the game's mega fans, and since the Kieran contract expired a long time ago, Limited Run was able to acquire the rights to release the game on modern platforms. So now, one of the most notorious and often hated games of all time is coming to PC, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, the definitive edition. I still can't believe it. This'll be an enhanced version that'll look and sound better than it ever has. Well, look and sound about as good as it possibly can. James is even in the special edition talking about his episode. Mike was shocked to find the game had a cult following. That made him happy. He said he hadn't thought about Plumbers for literally 2 decades until Limited Run contacted him. He said it shows there's still some people out there with a sense of humor. After the game, Jean continued to act and is now a professional stunt woman. She said because of the game resurfacing on the internet, she's had a few fans recognize her from the game. She's also still wrestling and has her own wrestling production company. When not doing any of that, she often appears at Comic-Cons and wrestling panels all over the US. In 2019, she launched Hollywood Botanica, her own line of natural artisan soaps and pet shampoo bars. Since most of the cast wasn't actors, they just returned to whatever jobs they were doing before the game. Although Edward J. Fasulo, who at the time went by the name Edward J. Foster, briefly returned to acting for the 2001 film Visions of Sugar Plums, which is probably more embarrassing than his role in Plumbers. He doesn't have any more credits after that. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is seriously a game I love. I recognize that it's bad, but for some reason, it resonates with me. I would never in good conscience recommend it to someone as a good game, but at the very least, I would tell them to watch a Let's Play. Believe me, I fully understand why people don't like this. It's not even a game per se. It's a visual novel that's told through still pictures instead of anime characters. When asked about the game, Mike said, Plumbers was a one-off, personal, and wacky experiment for me. Most people take the game, and themselves, far too seriously. From the very get-go, it was designed to be a silly project that doesn't fit into any category. The all-too-serious reviewers actually crack me up. Mike's happy the game still generates interest. He was also shocked when he was contacted by Limited Run. I asked him what happened to the tie, and he's not sure. He said either Ed, the actor who played John, kept it, or it ended up at Goodwill. So just think, someone else out there might have worn the tie. Maybe even a plumber.
John, plumbers don't wear ties. Now come on, stop fooling around. I just sat down and blew my little head off until...
Take your damn clothes off!
I want to take a moment to thank 2 people who made this all possible. My friend John Shapanek, who got me in touch with Jean Bissone, and also got me in touch with Josh from Limited Run, who then got me in touch with Mike Anderson. Seriously, guys, thank you. My experience with the game is different than most. In the early 1990s, I heard about the game, weirdly enough, from a video game magazine about the turbo graphics. They gave it a scathing review and told everyone not to even think about playing the game, let alone buying it. This, of course, meant that I needed to get it immediately. I went to one of my local GameStops and picked up the game for the 3DO. I took it to the counter and the guy working there refused to sell it to me. He told me the game was horrible and essentially repeated many of the things that were stated in the magazine. He said, "This is everything that's wrong with video games. This is plumbers don't wear ties." I told him I didn't care. I wanted it. He said he couldn't in good conscience sell it to me. He said if I really wanted it, I'd have to walk out of the store, walk back in and ask for it, which I did. I bought the game for $20 and I wasn't disappointed. It's something that, despite its lack of quality, has stayed with me for a very long time. I don't know why, but this game is just special to me. I have a small list of Holy Grail episodes that I've been wanting to do, and this one was near the top. You don't know how happy this makes me.